Well, good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mark Skidmore, and I'm the director of the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development. I'm also serving as coordinator for the Extension Opioid Crisis Response Work Group. And the work group is working to develop a strategic plan that Extension across the nation might use to um, address the opioid crisis or assist in that effort. And so we've had a series of webinars. We are on our sixth webinar. As you can see on the page here, there are several other webinars that we've already done. And you can click on this link right here, and it will take you to those webinars. The YouTube recording is there, the presentation, etc. So if you have an interest in any of these other programs, you can look at those. Today we're doing the Strengthening Families program 10 to 14 with Catherine Hockaday, and then we have one more where the date has not yet been set, and looking at the Prosper program. So I will introduce Catherine in just a moment. What I hope that all of you can do as we finish up the webinar, I'm going to put out this little piece right here, which is a link to a survey, and it's designed to provide some information about the program so that people can find a good match and potential for their state and their capacity and the needs that they have. So really appreciate your feedback there. And with that, let me introduce Catherine. I want to remind people that you're able to ask a question or include a comment on the chat section of the thing of your screen here. And so, Catherine, thanks for being here and preparing the webinar on strengthening the Strengthening Families program 10 to 14. Catherine is in the Department of Human Sciences Extension and Outreach. She's an extension program specialist at Iowa State University. So with that, Catherine, I'm going to pass it on to you, and thanks again for preparing this information.
Thank you, Mark. Can everybody hear me okay? If somebody could just put that in the chat that they can hear, I will proceed. Looks like several are saying yes. Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for the great introduction. As most people know me as Kathy, so please, if you do contact me after this, please do call me Kathy. Today I'm going to talk about an evidence-based program that is born and bred at Iowa State University. It was developed over 25 years ago and is delivered in over 25 countries. So we are very proud of this program. It is an evidence-based program. And what you'll see is I have a lot of slides today. This is the typical PowerPoint that we do for a lot of our presentations, but some of them I'm going to fly through fairly quickly because I do know it's a Friday afternoon and some people might not be really excited to sit through listening about a bunch of research, but I do want to touch upon a few of the research slides. But please do know that in addition to being able to go back and look at the recording and seeing the PowerPoint, if you jump onto our website under the resource tab, you will also be able to access this PowerPoint and see it at any point in time. Or if you contact me afterwards, I can also send it to you. With that, I will get started. If you can just do a show of hands, how many of you have heard of Strengthening Families program for parents in youth 10 to 14? Good. Well, 3 of you. And Deb Sellers, I hope you have, because Deb is here at Iowa State University. So hopefully, I was hoping that she would say yes. So what we do, we call this program SFP 10 to 14. There are other Strengthening Families programs out there, and ours is for the age of 10 to 14. So we always want to make sure that when we refer to our program, it is 10 to 14. So the distinction between our program and another Strengthening Families program is ours is a 7-week program that's meant for universal audiences. There's also a Strengthening Families program that's 14 weeks long that is more targeted towards high-risk audiences. So if you've heard of a Strengthening Families program, but it's not quite sounding exactly like what I'm talking about today, please know that there are different programs out there. So, like I said, I'm just going to kind of fly through some of the slides, and I'm just trying to move the little green arrow here out of the way. There we go. So again, if you think of a question. I'm happy to ask questions throughout the presentation, or you can save till the end, whatever works for you. But Strengthening Families program for 10 to 14-year-olds, it's a very interactive family-based program. What we do is we try to connect with parents or caregivers. A lot of times we call them parents, but truly we are meaning anybody who is taking care of a child. So it can be a grandparent, it can be a parent, it could be a foster parent, it could be an aunt or uncle. So whenever we talk about it being parents, we're truly talking about any caregiver that is involved in that child's life. And then our focus are on youth, families, in that situation where the youth is 10 to 14 years old. But what is unique about our program is that we are a family-based program. So a lot of you might be knowledgeable about a school-based program where they are just addressing the kids during the school day throughout the curriculum, or they're bringing parents together maybe in the evening in different workshops. But what most people like about our programs are that truly it's the families coming together, which just, so you're attacking the different problems and issues from both sides, which helps. We think it gives us a little bit stronger foundation for creating change in those families. But some people refer to us just as a substance abuse prevention program, but truly we are about building strengths. We're about looking at parenting skills. Our big foundation is trying to build the communication within that family system. And that's what every week we build upon each other, of truly building that communication so that when you get to those hard core things like substance abuse prevention, that foundation is already there. If any of you are aware of the multitude of agencies out there that have different lists where they put different programs on promising program status or model program status, please do know that based on our 25 years of evidence built throughout the research, that we are at the top of all of those different lists. We know that blueprints for healthy youth development is truly the gold standard of all the lists out there, and we are on the promising program list for them. And if you're not aware of what these lists mean, it just means essentially if you want to go for federal money, you typically have to pick a program that is on one of these lists. And so we're very proud of that and like to tell people that we do meet most of the qualifications to be on those lists. The features of our program that are truly unique to our program is that we are looking truly at prevention. Parents and youth are learning together. As I said, we are a family-based program. We use videos that portray parent-child interaction. So unlike some of the parenting programs out there, we are not asking those parents to divulge information about their family. Now, throughout the 7 weeks, of course they do, but what we do is we talk about during the parent sessions is they're looking at families on a video, and then that helps facilitate conversations about, oh, what do you think about that family and how they address that issue and things like that. And that's what the parents, I think, that really connects them to us is we've heard parents say, wow, you didn't come after us and attack us about our parenting. We truly were just learning tools through the DVDs and the conversation that was going on in the room. We have, as I've mentioned, we have been conducting evaluation for the full 25 years that we've been delivering the program. And we do address different cultures. We have several different curricula. For example, we have our Spanish curriculum called Familias Fortes, and so we work with different groups to adapt the program to be more culturally relevant as well as to translate it. The program format is that this is, as I've mentioned, developed for parents and youth ages 10 to 14. We typically only have about 7 to 10 families in each of the sessions. We used to include more 15 to 20 families in the sessions, but it just got out of hand, and we really want to connect with these families throughout the 7 weeks. So the way the program is lined up is these families meet together for 7 consecutive weeks, 2-hour sessions each week. So for example, maybe on Monday nights, if that's when the program is, the parents go into one room and meet for an hour while the youth are in a different room to meet for another hour. And then those families come back together for the second hour and work on family activities together. During the 7th week, it's about resources and hooking these families up to resources, as well as celebrating through a graduation ceremony where we truly try to hype it up and let these families know that we are really excited that they came together for 7 weeks to work on building their skills as a family. We also offer 4 booster sessions, which typically people hold for the families between 3 and 12 months later. And these booster sessions were just really, they were developed because the families really asked if they couldn't come back together. As we know, it's really hard to get families sitting in a room together for 7 weeks. But what happens is after those 7 weeks, those families really don't want to be let go. And so they always ask, how can they come back together? So we developed some booster sessions to go along with the program. I already kind of talked just a little bit about the session format and how the different groups are divided out, and then they come back together. To deliver our program, every agency or site or whoever would like to use a program needs 3 certified facilitators. What we do is we have 1 facilitator go with the parent group and 2 with the youth group, and then all 3 of them come back together and work together with these families. If you have 10 families in the room, you might have 20 to 30 people in the room. So we want to make sure that we do have enough facilitators there that they can do some one-on-one work with these families. The program activities, it is not all lecture. If we do any sort of lecture, say with the parent or with the youth, it is about 1.5 or 2 minutes. But what makes our program really exciting is we truly do a lot of learning games and fun games, a lot of interaction. So when I described about the parents watching DVDs, they are not watching DVDs for an hour. They're watching DVDs that last possibly an hour, but maybe there's some conversation that they're watching on the DVD that lasts for 3 minutes. And then they have a conversation that is led by the facilitator in the room where they are interacting with each other to discuss, again, the different tools that they've been learning. What the kids do, the kids are only watching DVDs for 1 short segment out of the 7 weeks, and that is for peer pressure resistance skills. And it's just in order to learn the skills before they practice them. But the kids' sessions for an hour are very much driven by what we call games. And these kids typically don't even know that they're learning game or that they're learning skills until we do the debriefing after the game. So for example, we have one game that we call the driving game. And that driving game is, they really get into this game. They love it. But they have drivers that go around to these different stations. So maybe a soccer game and their friend's house and the pizza place and things like that. But along the way, they get stopped because maybe one of the drivers was speeding. So they stop and they get a ticket. And so it talks to them about consequences to their behavior and what happens when they can't advance to, say, the soccer game to meet up with their friends because they just got, in trouble with the police officer or something like that. So again, what we know is that lecturing to these kids for an hour is not going to bring them back for the next 6 weeks. So we make sure that we have very interactive games that go on. I'm going to assume that everybody on the webinar is pretty familiar with risk and protective factors, so I'm going to kind of fly through this. But what we know is that risk factors are any types of circumstances that increase the likelihood of these kids engaging in risky behaviors. And what we know protective factors are it's those individual characteristics as well as what's going on in that child's environment that helps promote healthy youth behaviors and decreases that chance that they're going to engage in risky behaviors. So what we've done with the program is we've taken the different risk and protective factors that typically lead up to risky behaviors, including substance abuse, and we've built topics and sessions around these risk and protective factors. So again, this is kind of the part I'm going to fly through because I really want to get to some of the research. But do know that we've taken a lot of care in making sure that we address different youth and risk and protective factors with the parents and the youth. Here are just a couple of the sessions. I'll run through some of the topics of the sessions. Again, all this information you can actually find on our website, as well as this PowerPoint is on our website under the resource section. We have more than enough information on the website that most people don't even, they get lost in the website. But we have everything from the cost of the program to the research behind the program to, again, the topic areas, all kinds of information. So, but the topics of the parent sessions include the very first week, we're talking to them about having a nice balance between both love and limits. We teach them how to use I statements. We talk about listening to their youth, meeting their basic needs. So we bring up Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how kids' behaviors all fit into their need to address those needs, and how sometimes they do that in a positive way and sometimes in a negative way. And of course, for a few of the weeks, during weeks 5 and 6, we really hit it hard with peer pressure resistance skills on the youth side as well as with the adults. We talk about monitoring their youth, so asking them questions about who, what, when, and where their kids are, as well as just having them outline in a letter and discuss with their kids what their expectations are with their kids and substance regarding substance use. The topic of the youth sessions, we teach kids about how to compliment each other, one of those um, lost skills that a lot of people don't do anymore. We talk to them right there in week 1 about their goals and dreams, and we have them do something we call a treasure map, which just helps them lay out their goals and dreams for their life. And again, some of these kids are 10 or 11 years old, but it's still not too early to have that they all know what their goals and dreams are. And then for those 7 weeks, we keep referring back to their goals and dreams and things that, would this, if you were caught speeding or you were caught using drugs at school or you got kicked off of the football team, how will that impact what you want to do in life? So we said and then we spend 2 weeks on peer pressure resistance skills. We talk about friends and how important it is to make good choices with friends and what the outcomes of those can be. In the family sessions, same thing. We're doing family activities that are fun and very interactive. They are not sitting watching DVDs at that point in time, but they're doing things like making a family tree together that discusses their family strengths. We're teaching them how to have family meetings to discuss important issues, teaching them how to do joint problem solving. So again, that's what most people like about our program. It's just really unique in how we draw these families in. As I said, we've been doing research since the inception of the program, which was in 1993. And what we know, this isn't research from our program, but this is from National Institutes of Health, that what we know is that if a child starts to drink before the age of 15, that they have a 40% likelihood of becoming an alcoholic later on in life. And so what we know is, so here's for age 15, if we can delay that initiation of alcohol use, we know that we can cut that risk level down by half, and now only about 20% of people become alcohol addicted. And again, if we can delay that initiation of use till age 21, we know that we can again cut it down half. So what our goal with the program is, which is how it is with a lot of prevention programs, is we want to just delay that initiation of use. We know many times we cannot stop a person from using alcohol, but every year we can delay that initiation of use can make a huge difference. So now we have probably over 100 research articles that have been written about the program. There's been 3 major research studies done with the program, as well as some other groups have been collecting evaluation data. But I'm just going to present on a couple things here to give you a taste for the program. And then again, what my hope would be is that you would contact me afterwards and ask me more questions, or get on the website and learn a little bit more about it. But for our research studies, what we did is we implemented the program when kids were in 6th grade, and we did a pre-test with them, post-test, and then we've been following some of these kids for over 14 years to see, now they're in their 20s, to see how they're doing and what the effects are still throughout. In some of these slides, you will see the program that is listed as ISFP, and that is because originally when the program was written, it was called the Iowa Strengthening Families Program. And the reason that was is this program was written just with the idea that it was going to stay within the state of Iowa. But as you will see later on in the PowerPoint, people started hearing about the program, started asking more about it. And so as time developed, the name grew. We took off the Iowa Strengthening Families Program and we started calling it the Strengthening Families Program for 10 to 14-year-olds. But as you'll see in this slide, so here's the kids when they started with the program. They're in 6th grade, and this red line is the control group, and the other line is the program group. And here we are at 10th grade. So we're looking at them 4 years later and looking at what their alcohol use is. And we made sure that we asked questions about were they using alcohol with parental permission or without? Because we know that there's substantial differences between those who are using it with and without parental permission. But what you can see here is that the control group 4 years later, that those kids are using alcohol at a much higher rate than what the program kids are. Here again, same thing. We're looking now at drunkenness. So not just are they using alcohol, but to what level. And this one, we're looking all the way out to 12th grade. So here, the red is the control group. And so again, here now we are 6 years later looking at their drunkenness. And what we're noticing are those kids who were in the control condition, who were not receiving programming at all. 6 years later, they are using alcohol and getting drunk at a much higher rate than what the than the program group was. When we started the program in 1993, meth was not nearly as big as it was in the early 2000s. And actually, there was a time where Iowa was, I think for 8 or 10 years, we were actually the meth capital of the United States. So, but when we started the program, if you're familiar with the program, you'll know that we don't talk about specific drugs. We teach these kids how to resist peer pressure, because we never know what the next drug of the day is going to be. So back then it might have been alcohol, it moved into meth. What we know from all of our webinars that we've been on with these is that opiates is the newest drug out there. So again, what we're trying to do is just teach these kids some skills and the consequences of their behavior, but not necessarily addressing different kinds of drugs. So this is from our second research study where we looked at combining the family-based program, SFP 10 to 14, alongside a school-based program. And in this slide, you'll see we were looking at LST, which is life skills training. So again, we're looking at 6th and 7th graders here and looking at their meth use and to see where do the differences lie. Is it just within the family-based program? Is it within combining the family-based and school-based? Where are the differences? And what we know from this is these control kids, when we look at 100 kids in a school who were not receiving any type of programming, on average, 5 of the 100 kids were actually using meth. And this represents 4.5 years past baseline. So these kids are 10th and 11th grade when we're doing the data survey collection. Now here, this is the LST group. So these were kids who in 6th and 7th grade were only receiving life skills training in school, but they were not necessarily receiving SFP 10 to 14. And what we've done there is been able to show that if kids participate in a school-based program, we are able to cut down their meth use by half. So instead of 5 of every 100 kids using meth, now we only have 2.5 out of every 100 kids using meth. Now look at this. This is the bar that shows both LST as well as the family-based program, SFP 10 to 14. And now we're able to show that less than 1 kid out of every 100 is using meth. And again, this is 10th, 11th grade. So what this just shows is that any type of programming is better than no programming, but it is highly effective when you combine both a school-based program as well as a family-based program. Here is, this slide is sometimes difficult to explain, so hopefully I'll do a good job at it, but we're looking at the prevalence rate of when did kids say that they were using alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana. So for this first one, what we're going to look at is we looked to see when did 40% of the kids say that they were using alcohol without parents' permission. And what we know is that the control group, about when they were 14 and a half years old, 40% of them said that they were using. However, when we go over here to ISFP, remember this is the first version of Strengthening Families, 10 to 14, is that we were able to delay that initiation until age 17. So again, this is when did 40% of kids say they were using alcohol? And the differences are very, they're statistically significant. We're looking at 14 years versus 17 years. We look at drunkenness, the same kind of pattern. We look at cigarette use. I'm sorry, I've never used this little green arrow before, so I'm kind of overlapping on the numbers here. But if we look at lifetime cigarette use, when did 30% of them say they were using? Again, our ages for control are 15 and a half, and they're almost 18 years old once they're in, when we compare them to the Strengthening Families group. And then again, we go down to lifetime marijuana use. Now, even though the marijuana use is not statistically significant, it was very close to it. And so you'll see that if we go back to that initial slide from National Institutes of Health, that goal is to delay the initiation of use, because we know every time we delay that initiation by a few years, we are setting those kids up for more success, that they are less likely to become dependent on that substance. So to us, this is a huge slide. We're able to sit there and say, if you come through the program when you're in 6th grade, we are able to delay that initiation of various substances by, 2.5 years. And to us, that's pretty important. I see Allison's asking about booster sessions. And no, we actually have not conducted any evaluation on the booster sessions, because again, it wasn't part of our original 7 weeks, but the families were the ones who wanted that, to come back together. But we have talked about that multiple times, about that would be a really neat thing to be able to look at, because one of the booster sessions that was developed 25 years ago was about bullies. And we've actually talked about, possibly what would we do, could we do that as a supplement 8th week session. And so, to build it into the program more, since bullying is such a hot topic these days. But anytime we mess with this curriculum, we know it's going to mess up with, our evaluation that we've already conducted. But yes, there's, all the references to the published work. I'll tell you, Allison, if you jump on our website, you'll see there's a research section, and it goes straight to the institute that was conducting the research, and I'm happy to help you, sort through that stuff. Mark, participation in the program, is it voluntary or randomly assigned? What we did for the studies are we selected school districts, and the school districts were randomly assigned to, are you in a control, or are you in the treatment group? And so even though every child within that school did not necessarily participate in the program, we actually have a great little article that was written in NIDA that shows that we've got impact on the friends of those who came through the program. So Mark, if you came through the program, what we were able to show is that you've got positive impact on your friends, that they might be using substances less, because you're, trying to teach them some of the tools that you learned and how important it is to stay away from those things. So even though the kids and the families who were involved in the research, yes, they absolutely were voluntary within that school system, we are able to show that we've got some great impact on that friend. I don't know if I missed another question in there, but if so, we'll come back to it at the end. I just have a few more research slides, so I'll show you, and then we can fire away with questions. What we know is that if you attend the program in 6th grade, you're more likely to be engaged in school. And what we know is if you're engaged in school, you're more likely to graduate. And again, what we just know in general, without even needing the research, is that if you're graduating from high school, you're much more likely to engage in that risky behavior, a lot less than those who are not as engaged in school. We did not just look at substance abuse, even though that's what I concentrated on today for this presentation, but we looked at aggressive behavior with kids, And this slide is on self-report. And what we know here with the control group is, here I'm learning my little green arrow again, sorry, is with the control group, when we're looking out all the way to 10th grade, is that the control group that they are reporting that they have higher levels of aggression than what the kids who were in strengthening families 10 to 14. Then we also looked at discipline of parents. We tried to talk to these parents about, like I said, love versus limits, and doing more appropriate types of disciplining. We make a huge distinction between what are little misbehaviors versus big, and trying to teach them. We always hear the stories of a child came home 20 minutes late and they were grounded for a month. And so we try to work through some of those issues and talk about what's more appropriate types of discipline that might happen, and what happens when you give a consequence that is way too big. So we do talk a whole session with parents about how to be more appropriate with some of their consequences so that they don't shut those kids out, because what happens if you ground a kid for a month, they're more likely to sneak out, they're more likely to start lying to you and not to trust you and want to come to you and talk to you. So we just talk a lot about building, again, that foundation. We know a hot topic is depression and anxiety among girls. So of course, it's something we measured. We're looking 72 months out after the program started, after it was delivered. And what we see here is that, again, the red is the control group, that the girls, we know, that depression and anxiety are huge among girls. We know it's among both genders, but girls are of particular interest. And what we see are that those girls who are in the control group, much higher levels, and it is steady all the way up, all those years, showing that they become more depressed and more anxious. Where the girls who were in strengthening families, we do have a whole session on stress and talking about stress and what could they do to better address stress. And we really talk about their feelings and how they might behave differently based on, if they're not in the popular clique, or they don't have the same clothes, they're not fitting in with others, things like that. So we do address these throughout the topics. I'm going to flip through this one. I've already kind of talked about that. That's just different research studies. I'm going to get to the opiate stuff really quick. Without going through every number in here, what I think is really important about this slide is this. I'm going to show you all 3 research studies and what the outcomes were with opiates. So again, we delivered this program typically in 6th grade during our evaluation studies. And this, I don't know if you're able to see it, but we followed these kids to age 21 and 25. So we are looking now at the ages that, people, what we're hearing in the news, everybody, we're trying the opiates. And what is important about this slide is just to look, red is control, and the blue is the strengthening families 10 to 14 groups. And what we know, we looked at both prescription drug use in general, and then we looked at narcotics and opiates by themselves. And so what you can just see in this slide is that this is our first research study, which started way back in the early 90s. It was called Project Family. And what you can see is all the way out to age 21 and 25. Here's narcotics, here's general prescription drug use. Is that what we can see is that we have huge statistical impact on those kids. And again, remember, we don't address opiates, we didn't address meth, we don't address club drugs, whatever the drug was of the day. We just teach them skills to help them say no to their friends and get out of situations. Here's study 2. Here's where we combined the Strengthening Families program with life skills training to look to see. Again, without going through every number, red is control, blue are those who came through the program, Strengthening Families program, as well as the LST. And what we see, huge differences again, all the way out to age 25. So again, this is looking at prescription drug use versus prescription opioid use. And what you see in, if you look up here, what we did is we looked at high-risk subsamples. So we looked at those kids who were using multiple substances, is how we came up with a higher risk subsample. So it's not just that they were using opiates, but were they using alcohol, were they using tobacco, were they using multiple drugs? And what we found is we actually have stronger outcomes on opiate use when we're looking at our higher risk audiences, which to us was just really, really important to sit there and say, We know this is a universal program, but we know we are having impact all the way through. And this is our third study with Prosper, which I don't want to go into too much detail because I know there's going to be a webinar all about Prosper by itself. But again, Prosper is looking at a school-based as well as a family-based program put together, as well as building a whole infrastructure around technical assistance for these communities to really kind of do a big wraparound for these youth and families. And same kind of thing. Red is control, blue is our Prosper kids, our kids who came through programming, and we are still seeing overall differences between those who came through programming and those who didn't. Everybody's always interested in benefit cost analysis. What we know is prevention costs a lot of money, and that's usually what turns some of the legislatures off. But what we know, we've been able to prove through a different statistical analysis, is that for every dollar that you put into prevention using Strengthening Families 10 to 14, we know that we can save that community $9.60. And that money is coming back in terms of kids who are not going to treatment, families who are able to stay at work, kids who are staying in the school system, not not ending up in juvenile hall or in adult prison systems. So again, this is what we typically will take to funders and say, yes, we understand it costs a lot of money to do prevention, but if you're able to save $9.60 by keeping that kid in school, off drugs, doing well with their family, isn't it worth it in the end? What I'll just tell you what this slide says is many years ago, back in the early 2000s, the World Health Organization asked somebody by the name of Dr. David Foxcroft at Oxford Brookes to do an analysis of 6,000 programs that were looking at substance abuse prevention. We did not know David Foxcroft at that point in time. We didn't know that this analysis was going on, but he looked at all 6,000 programs and was asked to come up with the number one program. And I'll let you read what he says, but of course he says that he felt that the U.S. Strengthening Families program 10 to 14 was the top program. It had the research behind it. He looked at research, he looked at attrition rates, he looked at cost benefit analysis, he looked at all those things and put together. So what used to be called Iowa Strengthening Families program was now being discovered by the rest of the world. And that's when we changed the name to go to Strengthening Families program 10 to 14. So as I said in the beginning, we are in over 25 countries. We are all over Latin America. I just actually returned from a trip down there in Peru. Really excited to hear in Peru alone, they are reaching over 20,000 families every year using the Spanish adaptation of Strengthening Families 10 to 14. So it's just been a really, really exciting thing to be involved in this program. These are all just the testimonials. I'm not even going to go through that because, again, you can look those up and look at this, but I'd like to answer some of the questions. So I will stop there. I'm going to work backwards. So, Novella, when was the name changed? Oh, goodness. Late 1990s, I believe. I believe it's in 1997, but it might have been closer to 1999. It was before my time, and so I would have to go back to see the exact year. How much does it cost to adopt the program? All those costs are outlined on our website. It's really hard to kind of go through in a quick thing, but essentially you would need to be trained. You would have to have 10 to 15 or more facilitators trained, and so the costs differ depending on whether it's a small training or a large training, and then how much curriculum you need to buy and everything like that. So that question mark is actually much easier answered by jumping on the website or having a conversation with me. But you do need to be trained in order to use the program, and you do need to buy a full set of curriculum to be able to deliver it. But unlike some of the other programs, we do, essentially those costs are pretty much upfront. I know some programs you have to continue to buy workbooks and things like that to hand out to the families, and we don't do that. It's really upfront with the curriculum that's used with the facilitators and the training. And then after that, sometimes people don't come back to us for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years to buy more curriculum. So those costs are really upfront. I'm going to go up to see if I can see some of the other questions. Allison, any evidence of differential benefits for outcomes of based on family SES? That's a question I don't know. Off the top of my head, I do not believe that the researchers looked at that, but I don't know for sure. So that would be something I could, um, put you in touch with our the institute that conducted the research, and let you talk to them if you'd like. What's been the commitment of parents for all 7 sessions? Attendance rate? Great question. Thank you. So again, it is really hard to recruit families. We know that. It's hard to get them there for that first week. So we try all kinds of fun little things like, say, we teach you this during training. We say, offer them incentives, offer them free meals for the family during the sessions, give them free childcare, all those kinds of things to remove all those barriers. But once you get there, our attendance rates, our retention over the 7 weeks is usually over 90%. Once we get them there, they see how much fun they have that first week and they stick it out. And that's where we feel really excited. However, of course, it is hard to get families there because, again, asking them to give up 7 weeks is a difficult thing. But we've got tens of thousands of families all over this world attending every year, so I do know that it can be done. Was the opiate misuse among the youth who were prescribed meds? That question I do not know off the top of my head about were they just prescribed for ADHD, emotional difficulty, and such. I don't know that question, but again, I could absolutely put you in touch with our researchers and they could answer those questions. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions I missed. If so, if you want to put another question down the bottom.
Well, Kathy,
hey.
oh, yeah, I just wanted to say thanks as we're kind of waiting for any other questions to come in. I wanted to let the participants know that they can click on the survey link and provide some feedback about the program. So looks like Allison has another question here.
Yeah, are you familiar with Nurturing Parents? I've heard of Nurturing Parent programs, but I do not know the program per se, and I do not know the list of topics. I know a lot of the programs are very similar. I do know, like, I've looked at Love and Logic, and some of those topics are similar. And most of the ones, like, I've looked a little bit at Incredible Years, so I do know that a lot of the programs are very similar in their topics, which is great because it means we all understand that those same risk and protective factors need to be addressed. It's just, yeah, I'm not real familiar with some of, like you talked about the family development resources. I'm not familiar with their list of topics. I always tell everybody it depends on your area, it depends on the age group that you're dealing with. Um, there's some people who are really tied to using one certain program and don't want to move away with it. And I always say, as long as you're out there helping families, use what works for you. I firmly believe that you should choose a program that's off of one of the lists I provided in the beginning, especially the blueprints list. That is truly what the gold standard of evidence-based programs are. So I always just caution people, if you're going to put money into a program, make sure that it's been essentially federally approved by one of the agencies. Oh, Allison, you can ask as many questions as you want. That's what my job is. I'm on the phone or email some days for 10 and 12-hour days just answering questions for everybody who writes grants, to people who are already implementing, to this morning the past couple days I've been working with Botswana. They are interested in the program, so helping them develop a budget for their grant. I'm working with Australia because I met them when I was just at the Blueprints conference, and they're developing a grant. So my job is to seriously answer questions all the time.
Well, I don't see any. Oh, I think Novella is typing in a question. Maybe we'll wait for her, but we've been on for about the right amount of time for the recording. So let's see if we get another question, and then we'll close it up.
And like I said, you're welcome to surf around the website and to talk to me. I'm happy to talk to you. This post session includes qualitative response from you. It was a multi-method data collection. They looked at schools. They looked at they had teachers do reports. They had kids do reports. They did qualitative, quantitative. They did parents. They also did video observations of family interaction. So they've done it all. Pretty much the research that they've been doing is over $50 million worth of research. So they've done it all to make sure that they truly have the evidence needed to prove it works.
Well, thank you very much, Kathy. This is really great information to share with us, and thank you to everyone who participated in the webinar, and thanks in advance for taking a few minutes to fill out the questionnaire. Again, that feedback is really important for really all of Extension. So with that, I think we will close it off, and I wish everybody a great weekend. And
Mark,
thanks again, Kathy.
Mark, can I throw in one more comment?
Yeah.
Just because Novella said this. I always tell people, if you want to contact me, the best way to do it is email me, because many times I'm flying around somewhere. And so if you want to contact me, email me. It's way better than the phone call. But thank you.
Well, very good. Okay. Have a good weekend, everyone.